In this video, we will learn about the different methods psychologists use to collect data and to ultimately test hypotheses. The first method we'll start with are descriptive methods, and this is the starting point of any science. The objective of these descriptive methods is to describe a phenomenon. So we want to make initial observations that allow us to start forming hypotheses. If we don't know anything about a topic, it's hard to develop a hypothesis. And so we need to make those initial observations. And so these types of studies include direct observation, watching what's going on, or case studies, individual tracking of a phenomenon, or surveys, questionnaires, and other methods to collect data from a population. So let's talk through an example topic with each of these methods. Say you're interested in learning how people make choices at the grocery store. Specifically, you want to know what people grab for while waiting in the checkout line. Maybe your research is funded by a candy bar company that wants to figure out how to make their product more enticing to researchers, or by the grocery store. But it's always been a dream of mine to do research involving candy anyway, so we'll use that as the example. So for direct observation, you just have you, the researcher, watch customers in the checkout line. Maybe you observe via video feed, so you're not weirding people out by standing over their shoulders with a clipboard, but you look at their choices in real time. For a case study, you would follow a specific individual and track their checkout line impulse purchases. You might interview them to get more information about their background, their thought processes, and to see if their future purchase plans were affected by their behavior in this checkout line. You may even track the person for multiple visits to get a more complete picture of their purchase habits. So this case study is a more detailed look at a certain individual rather than just observing all individuals going through the checkout line. And finally, with a survey, we'd give an oral or written questionnaire to customers about their purchase habits. Maybe you hand it out as folks exit the store, or you follow up with calls or emails if you have that information. Now, we can't test hypotheses with descriptive methods. Descriptive methods only describe, and so we need to use other methods to actually start to make some conclusions about different phenomena. So correlational research studies are the next method that we'll discuss, and these are used to predict outcomes. And this is when you measure two or more variables and you look at how those variables change. So when two variables have a correlational relationship, we say that when one changes, the other also changes. So this is a correlation. There are two types of correlations that we'll learn about. One is a positive correlation, and this is when the two variables change in the same direction. So, for example, as the hours you study increase for an exam, your exam grade will tend to increase. This is a positive correlation. When one variable increases, the other variable increases. Now, this also is a positive correlation when your study hours decrease and your exam grades decrease. Even though both are decreasing, we still call this a positive correlation. Positive just means that the two variables are moving in the same direction. But the correlation, we call it negative when the variables change in opposite direction. So when the outdoor temperature decreases, it gets colder outside, our heating bills tend to increase. So when one goes down, the other goes up. Very importantly, just because we have a correlation doesn't mean a change in one variable causes a change in the other. We just observe a relationship between the two variables. So we say, and you'll often hear this, correlation does not equal causation, but we'll dig more into that in class. The cool part of a correlation between two variables is that it helps you make predictions when only one variable is known. If I had these data from my class, you could come and ask me what grade you will get on your first exam. I will ask you how many hours you studied and use the correlation to predict your grade. Of course, there are other factors and life is complicated, so the correlation isn't a perfect relationship, but we can inform our prediction this way. We'll look at how we describe the strength of these correlations in class. But ultimately, we as psychological scientists want to explain phenomena and behaviors, mental processes that we observe. And so to do that, we need to use experimental methods. In the experimental method, we manipulate one variable to see its effect on a second variable. So let's say we want to look at the effect of an antidepressant on levels of depression. We would give one group of individuals the antidepressant and the other group would not take the antidepressant. The no drug group would receive a placebo, basically an inert sugar pill, to simulate the act of taking a medicine, which we've seen to have some beneficial effects. This is the placebo effect. The administration of the drug is the independent variable. This is what we are changing. Then we measure depression levels on a standardized rating scale. This is the dependent variable, what we measure. The dependent variable, we say, depends on the changes we make in the independent variable. When we talk about drug administration or depression levels, we aren't being very specific. So for research purposes, we say we provide an operational definition of these variables to precisely define and describe them. For example, for drug administration as the independent variable, we would describe the dosage, the method of delivery, and how we would administer a control or the placebo pill. For depression level as the dependent variable, we would describe how this is measured, what scale we're using, provided by what type of person, at what point in time in the experiment, and all those other details that we would work out. These are the operational definitions of our independent and dependent variables. In class, we'll get practice with developing these operational definitions, and we'll dig into the benefits and drawbacks of each of these research methods.